Good afternoon. I have lost more money than many people will ever make in their lives. I've chosen the wrong projects. I've chosen the wrong partners. I've trusted the bank when I shouldn't have trusted the bank. I believed in business plans that didn't work out. And I wear the battle scars so that you don't have to. My videographer thinks I've lost more weight than most people will. That's sadly not the case. But I left £18 million on the table, not selling a business at the right time. And by the time I sold it all right. But it was worth £18 million less than it would have been. That was a hard lesson to learn. I lost £150,000 thinking I was a crypto bro when clearly I wasn't. Needed to sell. That was the challenge there. If I'd have written it out, it would have been fine. And perhaps my saddest story was I squandered £1.5 million buying a restaurant group because I just sold a company for 10 times the float price, and I thought I was an entrepreneur, so that meant I could do anything. It was a difficult restaurant chain, and it was a public company, so the failure was very public. We subscribed for a rescue rights issue, changed the management team, but it was an industry that I didn't know and I had no right in being in at all. And it got to the point where I paid down a lot of bank debt. We had £6 million worth of bank debt when I got involved. And the moment that we paid down the debt, so the bank thought they would get their money back by throwing us on the rocks. They threw us on the rocks. We lost our money. Hundreds of people lost their jobs. And it was a painful lesson. What didn't help was when my business partner called the restaurant critic from the Sunday Telegraph a complete, let's just say it was a very rude word. I'd actually like to read you the review, but I think it's probably illegal here. So I've made every mistake along the way, but I've learned a better way. And it's a simple way, really. I think that most of us are looking at wealth creation through the wrong lens. I think we hop along and our New Year's resolution thinking, let's just try and do a little bit better this year than we did last year. I wish that I had learned this way years ago. And I've written a book about it, Double Up Money Mastery. It's really based simply on compounding and the value of compounding. I suppose I wrote this book in service to my 25-year-old self. When I was a young businessman, I'd like to have known these tricks and tips. And I'm sort of defined by the mistakes I've made, really. And I said before, I wear these scars. I have fallen down many rabbit holes, made mistakes, trusted the wrong people, trusted the bank, perhaps when I shouldn't have done, so that you don't have to do that. I put the whole lot in this book I've written, Double Up Money Mastery, which came out last week. And it seems to have been quite well received. I was lucky enough that it hit the number 1 on the Amazon list of red hot new releases, and it was sitting at number 2 on the Amazon bestseller list, which I was quite proud about. You might think, well, why should I listen to this guy? What's so special about him? Especially after my opening line, which sounded like a confession from Gamblers Anonymous. So I have made a lot of mistakes, but I didn't go to university. I came from a working class family in the north of England. I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old. Loving family, perhaps a bit insecure because of that. But I fought my way, kicking and screaming, into financial security. I had a very unfortunate interview, really, with my father. He was a very strict man. And when I flunked my O-levels at 16, he said, we'll always love you, son, even though you'll never amount to anything. which was hard words to hear, but actually was probably the most motivating talk I've ever had in my life, because I fought to show him and to make him eat his words. I set up my first little enterprise when I was 15. I set up a pop concert in the local village and doubled my money doing that, booked a band, sold tickets. I set up my first real business when I was 21, which was an accountancy recruitment business. And I think that taught me the power of specialization. All we did was accountancy recruitment. I built it. I floated it on the stock market. It was the fastest growing company on AIM for 2 years in a row. And we sold it for 10 times the float price. Since then, I've founded or started over 30 businesses, 2 of them become over £100 million businesses. Another one was floated on the stock market. But I've made fortunes and I've lost fortunes as well. I've made the mistakes. And I think sometimes people learn more from the horror stories from the things that go well. But I'm not alone. I have a trusty panel of extremely competent people. Tara Rose, who's sitting over there. She should be up here, really. She's a very successful entrepreneur in the UAE, and started life as a hairdresser, got fired, as a lot of entrepreneurs do. And she's gone on to really form quite an empire. She's now got branches not in Dubai, but in Abu Dhabi. She's gone into the franchising business. I keep telling her she's not in the hair business anymore. She's not in the wellness business. She's in the franchise business because it's a different set of skills needed. And she's mentoring other people. She's got training people. She's also using automation in a way that most people aren't. I was reading a bio this morning and it said, "Beyond the hair" was her strap line, which for me is a little bit too much information, but I'm sure we'll hear more about what she has to say later. Next, we have Diane, who is not, as she tells me, a real estate agent. She's a property strategist. And I think we all know that Dubai's had some fantastic times recently, but it's also had some cycles where people have lost money as well as making money. And I think the overall holistic approach to real estate is something that she can help with. And I must say, I'm a businessman, really, but property has formed a big part of my life. And some of the talk this afternoon is about property because it's easy to leverage. And even people that have successful businesses often will have a property element. If you look at the Sunday Times rich list, a lot of the people there have an element of property. Stephen Hill, a very good friend of mine who had a recruitment agency, bought the building he was in through his pension fund. That did well. Another guy I know, Fred Gilly, who's set up Gilly Green, a hairdressing business in Britain. He's bought the freehold building of his businesses, and he's probably made more money from property than he's made from the hairdressing business. Geo are interesting panelists over there. I teased Geo yesterday by saying Geo's the man who sort of knows what's going to happen after what happens next. And he said, "Gary, that's cobblers, because if I did know that, I wouldn't be working for a bank. In fact, I wouldn't be working for anybody at all." But he does have an enormous insight into the future of finance. He is a DeFi guy working in a traditional finance bank, and I think he'll be very interesting to talk to. These are real people with real strategies who've got their own stories, and I'm hoping that they'll be very interesting too. Just a little bit of talk about the agenda. It is a masterclass. It's for your benefit. It's in service to you. So I'm going to prattle on for about another 35 minutes. Then we'll meet the speakers. We'll talk to them. You have an opportunity to chat to them. We'll have a break. We'll have a traditional English afternoon tea, scones and sandwiches, I hope. And then I'd like to try and do some practical exercise where you start to think about your own wealth journey. And we can chat about that for a while. And then there's a little bit more I'll end with, which is talking about secrets not in the book. And then I suspect we will finish and end up having a drink over the road at Koya. I wish we could get sponsored by Koya. That'd be quite good, really, wouldn't it? Sponsored by Koya. So let's just get right into it. Excuse me, I'm taking my jacket off. You only need to double £100,000 10 times to make 100 million. Just read that again. You only need to double £100,000 10 times to make 100 million. And it's really the heart of compounding. And Einstein famously said, or actually didn't say, I tried to fact check this the other day, that those who understand compound interest earn it, and those who don't understand it pay it. So whatever your starting stake is, start with 10,000, you get to 10 million. Start with £1,000, 10 times, you'll get 1 million. And this is really the premise of the entire book, but there are easier ways to do that. So just think about the scale. I know it off by heart. I could recite it in my sleep. I'm not a very good sleeper, so I may phone you in the middle of the night and ask you if you can repeat the doubling sequence. 100, 200, 400, 800, 1.6, 3.2, 6.4, 12.8, 25.6, 51.2, 102 million. That's it. Really, it's all in the book. So thank you. Goodbye. Sod off. Au revoir. I'll see you another time. No, but I think it takes 3 years per cycle. This is high-level stuff. We'll go into it in a lot more detail. So 10 good decisions, just 10 good decisions over 30 years. I mean, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a get-rich-slow scheme. You know, it's funny that I should have called the book DUMM, which is supposed to be about financial security. But it might seem boring, but it won't seem boring in 3 years when you've doubled your money and you're 3 years away from doubling it again. So 10 good decisions in 30 years, that doesn't sound too difficult. It shouldn't be too difficult, should it? Compared to the 2,000 or 3,000 cognitive decisions we make each day, you know, what to wear, to have for breakfast, I think that sounds doable. And you don't have to be particularly bright. It's all about the maths. You don't have to have a university degree. Some of the role models that I look up to, some of the most successful people that we've come across in tech, you know, Steve Jobs, Larry Ellison, they've all dropped out of university. You certainly don't need a university degree. You don't need money, you don't need a trust fund, you don't need a designer dog, you don't need a Tesla, you don't need a YouTube channel. You certainly don't need a genius IQ. I think Donald Trump's proved that quite well. You can be quite wealthy without doing that. And you don't need to quit your day job. I think many people here already have their own businesses, and that's great. Let's talk about how they can increase those. But for some people that are in senior roles that are starting to think about setting up their own businesses, I think there's a big fallacy. You don't need to go all in. You don't need to burn all your bridges. That whole statement about, oh, I sold everything, I risked everything, I jumped into the cold water. You don't have to do that. There's no reason why you can't work from 9 to 5 in your day job and use that salary and the bonus and the healthcare provisions or whatever they might be. And then in the evenings or in the afternoons from 5 till 9, then you're working on your side hustle. And many people started like that, you know, in the UK and the US. Phil Knight, who set up Nike, he was kind of selling shoes out of a car at the weekend. Amazon, Jeff Bezos was working for a merchant bank before he set up Amazon. We've got UK examples as well. Richard Branson, I believe, was running a student magazine when he set up Virgin. So you don't have to do that. You don't have to give up your day job. And in fact, I would advise you not to do because it's too stressful. So let's have it. Let's have the whole system. So this is what I'm saying. Number one, buy assets that can be improved. Apply 66% leverage. And I call that the sweet spot. We'll talk about that. The Goldilocks spot. It's not too much to get you into trouble, but it's enough to make a difference. Add value to the assets that you bought. Hold it long enough for you to have doubled your stake. Sell in a tax efficient way. We've got some horror stories about people that haven't done that. I've made those mistakes as well. And then repeat it. I talk about 10 cycles. But it doesn't need to be 10 cycles. Maybe 3 or 4 cycles are enough for you. Maybe 1 or 2 cycles are enough for you. And it's straightforward. It's just boring, simple maths, really. That's the system. Apply leverage, buy something, apply leverage, add value, hold it, sell it, repeat. And this system has been around for thousands of years. I didn't make this stuff up. The spice traders of the Middle East were doing this thousands of years ago. This was how America was built. The robber barons of America, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the JP Morgans, were using debt and leverage to build the railways and infrastructure of America. So, I talk high level about debt, and people are frightened of debt. When I was growing up, my father said, never be a lender or a borrower, be. But actually, I'll talk about property because it's easy to do. If you buy a house for cash, you might have to wait for 10 or 15 or 20 years for it to double. Longer than that in England. Not so much over here. But if you take a mortgage out, if you buy a house for £3 million, dirhams, it doesn't matter. If you only put in a third of your own money and you borrow 66% off the bank, then it only has to go up 33% for you to double your stake. That happens a lot more quickly. And that's why I think we can aim to do that every 3 years. Private equity have really nailed this system down to a fine art. They've become great at leveraging, understanding what they do, aligning management teams. They are ruthlessly successful. All I've done is take that system and try and distill it down so that everyday people like you and I can do it. So your assets only need to go up 33% for you to double your stake. Again, that seems easier. It seems faster. Because I think a lot of us get fatigued in business. It's difficult. And I say a 3-year cycle. And again, private equity have learned this. It's long enough to create value. Most of the good stuff happens in the first year or two, but it's short enough to maintain focus. So you're constantly, even when you're buying an asset, you're beginning with the end in mind. You're starting at the end. My last book was called Eat the Pudding First. It wasn't about food. It was about start at the end, chunk down, and work backwards. So I said on this side, anyone can do it. But actually, let me go back, because most people can do it. It's straightforward maths. I've said anyone can do it, but I've noticed recently some people are really thick, and clearly they can't do it. Most people can do it, and in fact, you see them here. They used to hide them away, thick people, but now they bring them out front and centre, and they put them on TV. If you don't believe me, you can watch Divide Bling, and they're all there for everyone to see. But most people can do this. It's maths, really. If you follow the system, the maths don't lie. There are some mental issues. There's some mental fortitude that we have to learn as well. So I've said anybody can do it. This is I've got 3 examples here. This is a simple example of something that I put together. I had a recruitment agency. I bought a payrolling company because we were giving lots of our payrolling revenue away. It was pretty straightforward. I didn't pay much for it. I didn't pay a high multiple for it. I merged the back office costs. It was really straightforward. I gave them our business. That doubled the profits. And then I sold the business to a competitor, to an umbrella company, actually. And we doubled our money in 2 years. So that's just one little thing. And I did that because I sort of stayed in my lane. I think a lot of us get excited about the sort of shiny object syndrome of, let's go and do that, or buy some hemp farms in Afghanistan. Let's stick to what you know, I would say, and you get in trouble when you don't do that. So that was my story. This, I think, was a picture of the office that my company works in London. This was a guy that used to own Foxtons. He bought the office building. He spent a lot of money on improving the fit out. He increased occupancy, raised the rent, commercial properties sold on a percentage yield rather than a pounds per square foot basis, double his money in 3 years. Again, pretty straightforward, not rocket science, not that difficult to do, really. This is my favorite one. Friend of my sister's, retired geography teacher, coming towards the end of her career, very poor pension from the UK. She downsized her house. She took £50,000 out of the house. This made me chuckle. But then she organised some spread betting to leverage it up. She joined a shares club and used research fabulously before sort of AI came in. She was patient. She doubled her money. It took a bit longer. It took her 4 years. And she's now spending some time helping fund her grandchildren's education. Fantastic story. Anybody can do it. One of the qualities some people say that I have, one of the few qualities some people say I have, is that I can sometimes see a degree of competence greater than people's confidence. And I can sort of eke it out of them. And if it doesn't sound too glib, I'd like to give everyone in the room permission, if you like. And I say this to younger people a lot. I'd like to give you permission to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And I'd like to give you permission to be seriously wealthy. I wrote this book in service to my 25-year-old self. That's the book. I'm trying to turn it into a community, the DUMM Club. I'd really like it to become a movement. I'm passionate about people learning to find financial security for life because it buys choices, it buys time to spend with the people that you want to spend it with, and ultimately I think it can buy peace. And that's actually one reason why I've recorded an audio version of the book, and I'm giving that away for free. It's available on the website if anybody wants it, because I'd like people to start thinking about at any age how to find financial security for life. So I'll move on. You've got choices. Everybody's got choices. They've got 2 visions of the future. You can carry on as you are, hope things work out, buy a lottery ticket. Actually, you can't do that here, can you? No. Or you can start to build your own wealth, take responsibility for your own financial future, own everything, be free, and build systematic wealth yourself. But I have to sort of give you a government health warning, really. Not everybody wants everybody to be financially secure, because governments often want taxpayers, not tax optimizers, which is why perhaps a lot of us are here, the freedom of the UAE. Banks would prefer to have savers than borrowers. And, without getting into too conspiracy, countries find it easier to manage poor people. And so not everybody is encouraging you, and there are lots of things happening to make it more difficult, I think, for independent people to be wealth creators. The window is narrowing. And it depends where you build your wealth. It depends a lot where you build your wealth. And we know these figures. There's no personal tax. Does anyone think personal income tax is inbound in the UAE? Is that going to happen? Is that going to come in? Any thoughts on its way? Yeah, I think it will.
Small level.
But it's a can-do place to work, as opposed to the UK, heavily regulated. It's not being the Proceeds of Crime Act now mean that HMRC can take money out of your bank account if they think that you owe them tax. You're guilty until proven innocent. It doesn't really feel right. The new labour laws are very they will make us uncompetitive, I think, in the UK, whereas there's a sort of freedom in the UAE. And I found it first when I came here about the driving, because there's this sort of can-do attitude. People just get in their car and they go somewhere and they do something. It's great. I love it. It's like being a kind of kids video game. You just do it. But also there's a sort of kindness I think there's a kindness about people that live here in the UAE, and I experienced that this morning. We had a few boxes to bring, so I had a driver bring us here. And when we got here, I said, "How much do I owe you?" And he said, "What's 1,000 dirham?" And I said, "God, it's a bit steep, isn't it?" Got my calculator out, did the calculation. That's 200 quid. That's not, that journey's not worth 200 quid. He said, "Where are you from, sir?" I said, "I'm from Great Britain." He said, "I'm so sorry." And he gave me 1,000 dirham. That's the difference between here and the UK. Um, so let's just go into a little bit more detail. Let's go into it in a lot more detail, really. So I'm saying buy undervalued assets that you can borrow against, but this could be anything at all. But this is where I would advise you again to stay in your lane. You know, you will find you know more than you realize you do about the specific areas of work that you've worked in and the information that you've gathered. I know in these world of AI, you can look up anything on ChatGPT, but there'll be specific areas that you're not just good at, that you are great at. It could be commercial property, it could be anything at all. It could be businesses, debt portfolios. I spoke to someone the other day who had a business plan for buying MRI machines, and outsourcing some of the NHS products. But they really do need to be assets that you can borrow against, that you can leverage up, really. And that's why property features so highly. Structure is again important. Think about whether you're putting in your own name, whether you're putting in a corporate structure. Think about the liability that goes with that as well. Are you going to get sued? I understand jails in the UAE are not particularly pleasant places. Think about exits, timing, funding, where you're going to hold your money. Is it going to be in a bank here? Is it going to be a bank somewhere else? And I said it's not all about tax, but it can be a bit all about tax. Where I come from in the UK, 24% capital gains tax. But of course, compounding also has this negative effect if you're paying tax on every double. So I talked about glibly double 100,000 10 times, you get 100 million, and you do. But if you paid 24% tax on every cycle, then you only end up with 38 million, not 100 million, 38 million. So you've lost 63 million pounds to tax. That's ridiculous. It's the same risk. It's the same effort that you put in to building whatever you've done. And that's why you need to plan the structure beforehand. 63 million lost to tax, that's a lot of money. You could probably buy a bottle of champagne in DISC for that. I talk about leverage being 66% sweet spot. Of course, you can leverage up more. Private equity companies leverage more. But it also can wipe people out. I was invited onto the radio yesterday on Dubai to try and teach kids a little bit about debt. And it seems to me this word debt covers good debt and bad debt. So if you're borrowing money to buy something that's going to go down in value, a pair of trainers, a meal for four, a holiday, that's bad debt. I was trying to explain this to children yesterday. But if you're using debt to fund something that's increasing in value, fill your boots. That's good debt. There should be a different word for it, really, but it's all called debt. Now, we all know people that have over leveraged. I'm friendly with two people over here. We have a third friend who was a very successful businessman from the UK, but just over leveraged. Bought a private jet, bad debt. 3-story boat, bad jet. Big jet, had a toilet, everything, could come to Dubai without stopping for fuel. But when he couldn't make the repayments, plane was confiscated and he was bankrupted. Wife left him. Mistress left him as well. He had a heart attack. That's true, actually. He's had a heart attack and went to live in Australia. That's a tragic story of a competent man who just over leveraged. And that's why I talk about 66% being enough for it to make a difference, but not too much so that you're worried. So that if you have a dip, if you're 90% leveraged, as it goes down 10%, you've wiped out all your equity. So we have to be really careful about that. Step 3, we have to add value. We have to add value because it's not a spectator sport. It's not like a football season ticket where you sit on the sidelines and cheer for your team. Adding value makes all the difference. And again, this is a generic slide because you need to add value in the area that you know and enjoy working in. I've talked about property because it's easy to renovate it, boost occupancy. But in a business, you can increase your product lines, you can put your prices up, you can cut your costs, you can increase your marketing, you can expand the regions. But you need to engineer the increase. It doesn't happen by itself. The system only requires the asset to grow by 1/3, but you've got to make an effort to do it. And that's very important that you do that. The knowledge about what you do, I think, is your unfair advantage. I think that's what makes a difference. I'll give you an example of that. There are 3 streets in London that I know what the property values should be and are. It's Cadogan Place is one of them. My wife and I bought a flat in Cadogan Place that was pretty much unbuyable. It had a short lease, a 58-year lease. You couldn't mortgage it. The lease was going to run out in 58 years. It was an estate sale. It had been on the market for a year. But because I had knowledge, and I'd done this before, I bought it, leveraged it up, and then enfranchised the lease. And the marriage of putting the longer lease together with the property meant that we could double our money. In the meantime, of course, we rented it out. And the great thing about putting 66% leverage in is that if you've bought a business that's making profits, or you've got a property that's rented out, you're using the income to pay off the debt. So that was just one example. But if you've got knowledge, you will spot opportunities that other people miss. And if you've got walking the streets money, then you can bid people for distressed assets and avoid expensive mistakes. So in this world of AI, and I'm sure Gio will talk a bit about it later, there's no excuse not to do a deep dive, but almost a sort of inch wide, mile deep about your particular area. You need to be the irresistible first choice, at least a trusted source of knowledge, but the irresistible first choice about your own product. This is quite controversial, the 3-year cycle. Most of us hold on to our businesses for too long. Now, if we are in love with our businesses, or it's a lifestyle, that's great. Knock yourself out, keep going, because that's what you love doing. But if it's just about wealth creation, don't fall in love with your business. It's not one of your children. I talk about a 3-year cycle. Private equity really manage billions of pounds based on 3-year cycles. It's long enough. Most of the levers that you can pull to make a difference in businesses that you buy can be pulled in the first year or 2. The differences you'll make, management changes, fee rises, product increases, you can make most of the value. Now, I said I left £18 million on the table. That was because I didn't sell the business at the right time. And I knew better. The business had done well. I'd created the value. But I was narcissistic or greedy. I thought it was going to keep going up. But actually, I knew the sector. Recruitment margins were in decline. The business was past, like the sausages in my fridge, the business was past its sell-by date. And I should have known better. Don't make that mistake. Now, when you are setting up businesses, often you can do what I call a double-double. So you can double it in 3 years. But if you think you can double it again in 3 years, again, crack on, do a double-double. There's less risk. It's a market that you know. The other thing that people don't talk about, and it'll be interesting as we unfold the afternoon to talk to people about this, is there's not much written. There were 20,000 books written in the last 10 years on business planning. but there wasn't very much written on management fatigue. If you're going all in to build a business, if you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about things, if you've got that attitude of somebody's going to be first and it's going to be me, I'll walk through that wall to make that sale, you can't do that forever. And I think what private equity have realized is that after 3 or 4 years, you're knackered. You can only run for so long, even if you're running a marathon, you've got to stop, have a bit of a rest, and then carry on again. And I think private equity have really learned that extremely well. Sell to keep score. Again, a controversial point that a lot of people argue with me against. Pay for profits are fantasy. When I was running a public company, I used to love getting up in the morning, looking at the share price and timesing the share price by the number of shares that I had. Made me feel great. It made me I used to think that was what my net worth was. Times the share price by the number of shares. That's how much I'm worth. But I couldn't sell the shares. It was a small cap company. There were limited opportunities. There's insider trading rules and you can't sell between announcements. But really you have to sell to keep score because you need the money in the bank to put twice as much in for your next doubling exercise, really. The system fails if you hold on. Also, if you're holding on and on and on and on, leverage can become your enemy because you have the onerous nature of paying back your interest. So you do need to keep score. And secondly, the repeating slide seems obvious, but it's not just doing it again. You pat yourself on the back. Well done. You've done it. But once you've done it once, you have the confidence to do it again. First time you did it, you were a rookie, right? But the next time you do it, you're an expert. Because you're not just compounding the money, you're compounding your contacts. You've got more confidence. You know you can do it. You know who you can trust. You can't trust. You know where the deals are. You know the brokers are. You know the intermediaries are. So it's everything. By the time when you do your first cycle, it all seems a bit new and scary. But by the time you're on your third cycle or your fifth cycle, you're not learning. You're just executing because you've done it before. Assuming you stay in your lane and don't go and buy a fish restaurant like I did. So that's the maths. It's all pretty straightforward, not rocket science. I didn't make it up. I'm not a genius. But there's a lot of mind stuff that goes with this as well. There are a lot of mind games. And the 4 main things that I think people worry about, the psychological battles, are these 4. And I think mental stamina can be taught and it can be learned, but it does feel awkward for us at the beginning. So learning to handle the zeros. If your starting stake, we do an exercise later to get people to think about what their starting stake might be. Enough to matter, not enough to get divorced over. But can you handle the zeros? So if it's, let's talk in pounds. Let's talk in pounds. So if it's £200,000, it's not monopoly money, but it's probably not going to change your life. If it's 400 or 800,000, 1.6 million, you're starting to talk about retirement money. 3.2 million, 6.4, 12.8 million. Do you have the mental stamina to not get frightened and keep going when the numbers get bigger? It's a technique that's learned because everyone says, oh, maybe you should quit now, you're ahead, maybe you should stop now. But you can trust the maths. The maths don't lie, but your emotions often do. I talk quite a bit about staying in your lane, so I won't flog that. Most people that are really successful in business got there one way. Elon Musk didn't start playing around with rockets until he'd made his money in PayPal, and that paid for him to go into Tesla. Most people, George Clooney, he made his money as an actor before he decided to be a tequila farmer. And I think you think that when you see successful people and they've diversified and they've got huge portfolios, that's the way to do it. I think spreading your risk like that just makes you average. I do think you need to stay in your lane and do more of what you're good at. Sell when you've doubled. Take the money off the table. Don't fantasize about how good life will be. Take the money off the table and do it again. Unless you really think that you can double it up all again in 3 years' time or leverage it up again, do it again. Or if you've got a business, you might buy a competitor. You might change the whole premise as well. And then the last thing really is when things go wrong, what do you do? How do you handle things when things go wrong? What happens if there's a property crash? If you have enough data, the data will tell you what to do. The first thing to do, I guess, is nothing. Don't panic. We're going to talk a bit about who your tribe are in a minute and who you rely on for business advice. Turn to a business advisor. It's lonely doing this by yourself. But follow the numbers. You should know in advance by the way that you're measuring things, what's the worst that can happen? Is this a situation where we bail out, sell and start again, or is it just a temporary blip? But that's a difficult mind game. It's a really difficult mind game to understand. But you can build mental stamina, as I said before. So this is really a précis of the battles. I'd urge you again and again, know your sector, become a specialist. If my knee hurts, I don't want a general practitioner. I want a knee specialist. If I'm getting divorced, sorry, bad example, I want a legal person that just does divorce, not someone that's flogged a house or done your will last week. So I think specialization, I've written there, knowledge kills fear. Know your sector. Know your numbers. There's an old expression, what gets measured gets done. I think that's a great expression. What gets paid for gets done more. What gets paid for a hell of a lot gets done a hell of a lot more. So know your numbers. It'll stop you panicking. And also find your tribe. There are all kinds of statistics that show that people are more successful. It's better with a band. You don't find an Olympian who doesn't have a whole support system behind them. If you go to Slimming World, there are a whole load of Gamblers Anonymous. There are a whole load of people behind you, helping you. There's an old expression that you become the average of the 5 people you most hang out with. Hang out with good people. Have lunch with people that are better than you are. Join a community. Join a share club. Join the DUMM club if I can have a pump for my own asset. Or join somebody else's, or join the global collective. But find your tribe. Find some people to help you along your journey. I think one thing COVID taught us is that humans are gregarious people. We're supposed to be with other humans. It's especially if you're doing it for 30 years. This is a lonely way to go, alone. So I think that's it. Enough with the psychology lesson. Not supposed to be that. If you want a therapy session, well, see me afterwards. I'll book you in, actually. In fact, my doctor's here. Where is he? He'll book you in. Oh, no. So I think the challenge for the whole of today, we ambitiously talked about transforming the way that we all look at money in an afternoon. That's difficult to do. But my challenge to you is, we know the maths work. We've been doing this for 4,000 years. The system is proven. It's really about, can you hold your nerve? Are you ambitious enough, passionate enough, disciplined enough to do it? Looking around the room, I think there are about 47 people in this room. Maybe 3 or 4 will do their first double. Maybe 10 or 12 might get to 5 on the scale. And maybe only 1 or 2 will stick with it long enough to make the millions that they want to make and find financial security for life. Will you be one of them? I'd like to think 1 or 2 of you would be. And are you brave enough to find out? Anyway, that's me done now. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Tara Rose. I do get really excited meeting entrepreneurs and trying to work out what makes them tick. And I'm a big fan of Tara's. And I'd like to start off really by asking you, what drives you? Tell us a bit about your story, but I'm keen to understand what drives you.
Okay,
Where's your motivation?
I mean, mentioned earlier about, having no education. So I hated school. I didn't fit in. The British curriculum for a creative person is horrendous. If you can't, if you're not very good at memorizing or you can't spell, you're thick. So I think that was where, for me, I left and I felt thick, and I didn't fit into the system. So, for a long time, yeah, I didn't realize my potential. But anyway, my mum managed to find me a job in a hair salon. I was like, right, I'll give it a go. And I remember walking in the first day and I looked around and I was like, wow. I was like, well, these people here are exactly the same as me. Everybody was working hard. Everybody had high energy. But equally, again, there was something really amazing about seeing the people that came through the door. Obviously, it rains a lot in the UK. Everybody's really stressed. But you saw what it did for people. By the time they'd finished having their hair done, they looked and felt so much better. So for me there, I fell into it accidentally, but I really did, it was the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. So yeah, that's where it started.
You just said you felt the same as everybody else, but I talked earlier about being given permission? Was there somebody who inspired you, who gave you the permission and the confidence to take that first step and set up your own business?
Well, no, for like all of my 20s were an absolute disaster. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to find that confidence. So because I didn't understand that I was different and I did have limiting beliefs and I struggled with my own self-confidence, I went down the wrong path. My whole of my 20s, drinking too much, partying, other problems, which led to me being, jobless and living on people's sofas. So my 20s, even though I'd found this most amazing career, I didn't have anybody. Nobody told me about all these things, So I just thought, what's wrong with me? Why am I different?
But you could have stopped when you were a lady who owned one salon that was making a living, but you were driven to go on to do so much more.
Oh, absolutely. The moment I understood that I was the problem, but equally the solution changed my life forever. My life didn't really change for the better. We moved to the UAE 17 years ago. I just moved the problem. Luckily, I met my husband, who we were equally the same. But yeah, we were both meant for more, but we didn't realize. I think my husband picked up a book one day, and then that was it. Picking up that book changed everything because he then pushed me to open my salon, and that was where my life changed forever. And yeah, it's amazing.
When I was talking to you the other day, you weren't talking about health and hair and beauty. You were talking about the pillars
Yes.
of wellness. Tell us a bit about what are the pillars of wellness?
So I believe that we all have problems. We all think we have problems. Look, unless you are critically ill or dying, we don't have problems. Yes, things are very, very difficult sometimes. But for me, I worked out it's all around the 8 pillars of wellness. So is it occupational? Is it financial? Is it spiritual? Is it social wellness? If you have a problem, and like I say, you are not critically ill or dying, it is to do with one of those pillars. So that was a game changer for me. Creating the awareness, right? Where is this struggle coming from? And then understanding that from that, once we have the awareness, if there's a problem, it's because we don't know, we're not facing it. We're not learning the tools. We're not looking at how to get out of it. We're not growing the neurological pathways to take ourselves out of it.
We talked earlier, Tara, about people learning more from failure than success. What are the things that tripped you up, and what did you learn from them?
There's been so many over the years, but I really, really do believe that have been my best moments because you have to crack yourself open in order to get to the next level. I believed I scaled quite quickly. I went from one salon. I did hair myself. I had no idea how to run a business. I went to 2 to 3 to 4 to buy another one. To then 2 and a bit years ago, I opened my branch in Elcoos. And
That's the huge one I came to.
that's the huge one. That's where the shit hit the fan. And not really, there's been key moments across it, but that was the biggest one because, it had got so easy almost. Not so easy, it was difficult. But I was like, well, I've done that one. I'll do another one. I can do another one. I can do another one. But what had happened was I didn't realize that really, and I do realize if I look back at it, but every year in business requires a different version of you. And I thought at one point that scaling was about having more branches. But what I didn't realize was here's more overheads, more stress, more problems that come, which are great if you go back and do the work to get to that. Anyway, the last 2.5 years have been very, very difficult. But oh my goodness, those lessons in those 2 years.
Can I probe a bit more precisely, specifically, what went wrong, and were there times when you thought you might not survive?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary this year. The year before that, I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do it. Why am I doing it? I even said to Murray, I said, I think I just want to be a housewife. I saw the look in his eye and he was like, so yeah, 9-year point, it was difficult. I wasn't sure, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why I was doing it. I was like, oh my God, I've got more trouble, more stress. I don't know where I'm going. And I thought, that's it, I'm done. A couple of months later, I started digging deep again because I was like, right, what's the alternative? Let's at least give it a go, Anyway, dug deep. And then, wow, in the last 18 months, the stuff I've learned and the plans I've got now, the systems, the structure, the scalability has opened up a whole new world for me. So most people would have given up. I refuse.
Was it more that the costs overran, or was it more that you didn't get the sales?
We had everything, people, more staff who were never happy. But I'd worked out I was trying to be something to everybody. I was the bottleneck. Everybody had to come through me, every problem, and no wonder, but I'm trying to keep everybody happy.
And in your corporate world, who were your tribe? Who did you rely on? Did you have strong financial control? What does your board consist of?
Well, I am 100% owner of my company. My biggest partner is my husband. We've come from nothing, to really struggling along the way to building things, but we do a lot of coaching and mentoring. Like we invest a lot into, successful people in other industries. We take those models and then we implement them to our businesses. But yeah, that was, it was some hard lessons along the way. But yeah, I think, it's one of those things you grow together or you grow apart. And that was a huge thing for me. We grew together. We grew our businesses together. We grew our lives together. We support each other.
Although you work in the wellness and beauty areas, there are a lot of people in here that have disparate businesses in different areas. What are the main things you have to watch out for and worry about if you're growing and scaling a business in the UAE?
You have to know your numbers. People think more clients. I need more clients. I need more salons. Most of the time, the money is in the business. For us, we look at average bill, frequency, treatments, retail, getting the frequency up. For us, if you just did more with what you already have, rather than thinking the next best thing, how can I evolve what I've got? How can I make this better? How can I, that is a huge thing there. The next thing is build people within your company to be future leaders. One of my biggest, most proud of at the minute is my first franchisee is one of my managers that started with me as a hairdresser, 9 years ago. So again, building future leaders within the company and sales. When you're all in sales, whether we're selling to our team, our vision, whether we are selling to our clients, whether we are selling on social media, you've got to understand it's a game of sales. So those three, your numbers, building future leaders, And then, yeah, everything is a game of sales.
So what's your meteoric rise over the last few years? If we're fast forwarding, I talk about a 3-year cycle. Take me forward 3 years in your cycle. Where will Tara Rose as a brand be?
So we are scaling. We are scaling through systems and technology, but we are building a new concept. I'm building a franchise model that is technology and education and mentorship led business. We will have that, but we're also building systems and automations within the business that have the potential to go into other businesses as well. From that, there, we can take the things that we've learnt, we can put it into education. I want to become the Mind Valley of the hair, beauty, and wellness industry, which then comes into products and stuff. So,
The mind value of the hair. Just run that by me again. What is
the
that?
Mind Valley of the hair.
Mind Valley.
Yeah. So, I understood my business. People teach you how to cut and color hair, but they don't teach you the other stuff. Half of the stuff, half of the ways I've grown my business have nothing to do with the hair industry. I've learned how to speak in public. I've learned about marketing. I've learned from coaches. It's understanding that you can take a stylist and you can grow their career. They may be able to cut hair, but if they can't talk to people and they can't sell, they're screwed. And how do they go from here to all the way up to franchise owner? Again, business owners, I've struggled. I've gone through every pain point. So I'm building systems along the way to be able to teach other business owners not to have to go through the things that I went through. So when I talk about the Mind Valley of hair, beauty, and wellness industry, yes, we can bring these big hair superstars in, but it's the models that we then integrate into that, which then can bring, stylists can, learn more, earn more, businesses can grow more. So that's the concept behind it.
One of the other generic things I think you do really well, and the last question I ask you, and let's throw it open to the floor if anyone wants to think of any questions to ask, is you're very big on automating systems, you're very good at using future technology, and you're very good at your socials, promoting the brand. That's something generic that lots of people can learn from. How did you learn to be good at that?
Well, I think it was the confidence to be in front of people to begin with. For a long time, I hid behind my brand. So it was that growing that inner confidence that your company will only grow to the level that you will. So it was first of all getting that out. And then understanding that people buy into people. So if I want my business to grow, I want people to buy into me. So they're going to need to see me, and then understanding the automations and the systems that we're building are built through me and the things that I've learned along the way and from every single pain point. So the combination of the three is, yeah, it supports everybody. For me, it is about, yes, I want to scale. Yes, I want to make money, but it's about creating freedom. It's about creating, futures for other people, helping people grow their businesses. But also, for me, I've chased money. I've chased it definitely, but I think that was where I was my most miserable.
You're most unhappy.
Yeah. Oh my God, I need that car. She's got that handbag. I need it. Oh, let's fly on a private jet.
I do think there's an interesting point there because youth culture kind of demands instant gratification, doesn't it? I want it now. Kim Kardashian's got it now. Amazon will deliver it tomorrow. You can put it on a credit card. I have to have it, and most businesses take time and patience to build. Does that resonate with other people in the room?
And I think that's it. Without me even realizing, when I started my business 10 years ago, I've just been 2% better every day. I've been 2% better every day without me even realizing.
Well, if you compound that, I can work it out.
Yeah. But the thing, people don't want to do the 2%. They want it now, and then they do nothing, and then they're like, oh my God, you're so lucky you've got all of this. I'm like, yeah, try going through it.
Tara is a real person, someone I admire. Under the hair, beyond that, what was it? Beyond, yeah, under the wig. She's been there, she's done that. Are there any questions? What would anybody like to ask of Tara or for me, or any comments? She's established a pretty important brand and a well-known brand. Danny?
You mentioned people being the problem or most of the problem. Can you give examples of what you
She's talking about you.
About
now.
you, Darren.
I think again there you work out, you get to a point when's the right time to sell, and understanding that I love my business. I love what I do. I really, really do. But I've got to a point where I've grown myself so much that I want to be able to give back to people who want it, and sometimes that's really difficult because people want growth, but they're not prepared to put the work in, and I think, it's always somebody else's fault. And I think the more you work on yourself and the more you grow, the more you can't listen to it as well in a short space, if that makes sense. So I think, people, when you try and spread yourself too thin, you do nothing, and the bigger you get, people come to work for me, but they don't get me. They get my branch manager, they get the, who aren't me. And then everybody's unhappy. Well, I thought I was going to get this when I was there. And I think when you're trying to navigate yourself and you're trying to go through all these things, trying to find your next level with all the pressure of thinking, oh my God, I've got to pay all these people. And now I know they're unhappy. It can just be really, very, very stressful. The bigger you get, the more problems you've got. The bigger, the more money you earn, the more risk, the more, it's terrifying. But yeah, I think people it depends, like you say, your tribe. Who is your tribe? And for me, my next level is, yes, I love my salons and my businesses. Do I want to be the owner of like lots of salons where I've got 100 employees that are all relying on me? No, not for the next however many years, because I've worked really hard and I want to be able to create some type of freedom. So this is where the franchise comes in. I get to mentor. I get to give them systems. They're financially invested in, so they want to learn, and again, giving the people that work for me these opportunities to go on this journey as well. I mean, it's one of those things. There's so many hair salons in the UAE, especially in Dubai. You've got to really, and this, like, especially the staff chase money, because it's like, and I think that is quite a sad thing here. Yes, it's an amazing place to live, but equally, unless you can't offer something more than money, they will be gone. So that's what I've really tried to work on is building, because I am a hairdresser and they can see what I've built. If I can build and I can lead and I can grow and I can create them opportunities, it becomes not just about the money, because you can only earn a certain amount of money. And I think that's probably one thing is work on the things that people can't take away from you. Nobody will be me. Nobody will work like I do. Nobody cares like I do. But we're not for everybody either. And that's fine.
So somebody quite famous, I can't remember who it was, said, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is building your own culture something that you've worked really, really hard on?
Yeah, definitely. It was funny once because it was like, oh my God, your team's amazing. I was like, so I put stuff in the air conditioning. Like, yeah. But they have so much fun because again, they're like me when I was that girl that walked through the door however many years ago. They now feel they're exactly the same as I was. They see hope, they see dreams, they want to be something, and they're inspired by it. So that's it. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today without the people around me, and that's a fact.
I do love it when you ask people why it's like that or what the culture's like, and they just say, well, it's just the way we do things around here. They're infected, they've got that culture. Any other thoughts, questions? Yeah, there are lots. Eddie.
Thank you. A question similar to what was just asked, but from the perspective of, I have an observation. Please shed some light whether or not my observation is true or not, because I'm relatively new. I've only been here for 2 years, but I witnessed quite a bit an attitude that service-based businesses are really not focused on longevity of a customer, and everybody just seems to be one-ups. There's not a lot of follow-through. There's not a lot of great service
Yeah.
to retain customers. And I'm in a business that I am looking to, help businesses achieve that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to me that too many of them care. What do you think?
No, they won't be around for much longer. That's the hard truth. Dubai is the next best thing, the next fancy thing. But you have got to, there's three types of companies. There's, charities that will always earn great money. You've got your middle set where everybody is fine on price and nobody cares about service. The ones that stay, the ones that last, are the ones up here that keep adding so much more value. It's not about the next fancy drink or this, but, this is where people come back, where you give them the most amount of value that they're not going to go to the salon down the road or the other business down the road. And this is why you see so many businesses closing as soon as you see them opening here. Overheads, all of those things. And then understanding that the amount it costs to get a new person in, if they're not retaining it, they're actually hemorrhaging money. So yeah, it's not sustainable and they won't last.
I think that's a good question, because I think especially here, but anywhere really, you have to work in service to your customer. There are only shortcuts. There are no fiddles. You can't be some Johnny come lately trying to sort something out. You have to work in service to your customer, understand what their challenges are, and figuring out a way how to fix them. There are a few more questions. Tom, I think you had one.
Yeah, you said on expanding the business. Then Gary was talking about leveraging a business. Did you find leveraging the business was something just straightforward to do, or just a nightmare in the UAE?
I mean, we started from nothing. I think we used to get, I moved here with £200, so you can leverage here, but it's very easy to over leverage. I've been there as well. What the problem is where are you getting your advice from? Who's teaching you? Who are your mentors? And I think that was the biggest thing. I think we've been lucky enough to really understand that mindset of, I'm not listening to Brenda down the road. We're going to read a book, or we're going to podcast, we're going to get coaching. And I think the moment that we things got a bit easy, that was where things started to pull away a little bit.
So you think there's a time when you became complacent?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've always worked hard, but if I really think about it and I'm honest, I was yeah, it'd be easy, just do it again. But I think every scale, every method, every new thing coming in, every 6 months, you need to go back to those goals. You need to realign. Am I on path? Does it change? And I think often enough we don't look at these things. But yeah, you have to keep updating your software. Your brain is a muscle. And if you don't work on the 8 pillars of wellness, it's not sustainable. Your intellectual muscle fails, emotionally, you're all over the place. So, yeah, you have to keep evolving. You have to keep aligning and you have to keep evolving.
Good. I agree. Last question. Yes.
In terms of when you started, of course, obviously you started to scale. When did you kind of realize that was like, how did you kind of start scaling essentially? Or when did you know that was the time to start to scale? Or did you just kind of,
the second salon, I was like, there's loads of clients, may as well open another one. And that was where it really hit. That was one of my first big breakdowns. I just had a baby. I was like, what is wrong with everybody? But again, I didn't realize it was me. I was the problem, Yeah, I think, I only really understand after scaling now what it takes to scale. You think you learn after 1 or 2 and then buying and selling one. But I think every year, every hardship, it's like, right, this is teaching me something. What is it? What's the lesson? What can I learn from it? And how can I improve it next time? Yeah, I think you learn as you go, and understanding the mistakes are the lessons which actually make you better. And yeah, I think we have the opportunity to learn from anybody here. The book, so who's doing the thing that I want to do? You find them, study them, learn from them, and that's how we get there. Don't tell too many people what you want to do because they think you're a nut job and try and talk you out of it. And I think that's it. And you say, find your tribe. I don't want to be around negative people. I don't want to be, I want to be around people that inspire me. And I think that's half of it. And that goes back to wellness again, your social wellness. But yeah, I think, pick the person that's doing the thing that you want to do and then copy what they're doing.
I think it's interesting because so many of the questions are generic questions about business. There'd be no questions about hair and bleach. it's the generic questions about business that we all face. So well done.
And do you know what? The hair and beauty wellness industry is a, $1 trillion industry, but it is so fragmented. Most people don't know how to run their businesses. They fail. It is the concept of a hair salon. If I tell people I'm a hairdresser, their faces. They're like, but again, this is the thing. I see what is missing. I see what can be done. And that was what you were saying earlier. Like, what are you good at? What are the gaps, and where can you take it?
I'm inspired. I think that's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Tara Rose. So, Diane Candamil, I've known for a little while now, and what actually is a property strategist? There, I mean,
Well, property strategy is someone that plan for you in a long term, but also understand where you want to go, where you want to reach. Not everyone is for every project. Not everyone can invest the same. So it depends your family, it depends where's your job, depends if you want to live there, it depends how many years you want to be on it. So you have to have a long-term plan with someone who understands who you are and where you want to reach.
So it's interesting. I think we're at an interesting stage with property in the UAE. And there's a swagger about a lot of people that have done incredibly well buying pretty much anything. You could have just got a pin, couldn't you, and stuck it in Property Finder and bought what was ever there and done well. Is that just not what you do?
No, that's not true.
Um,
Actually, there is a lot stories as well of people who invested in the raw products in the wrong areas, and basically they're selling OP 1, 2 million, 3 million down. They're in debt and they have really bad experiences. So the difference is working with someone who really understands where the city is going, where the country is going, where are the key players in the country, and stick to that long-term vision. The UAE is still growing. A lot of people think the country is done, but it's not. We are all part of it. And we all need to grow with it, and we need to understand where the country is going, and we all are catching that way, which is, for example, right now, Abu Dhabi is the place happening now. And if in the long term strategy that you build, that you see, for example, Disney, all the museums coming, all the train coming, all these new things happening, and this is so important that you understand it in a long term, so you can catch the wave, invest on it, and enjoy it, basically. But not everyone is
a lot of people,
aware of it.
a lot of people have perhaps been sitting on the sidelines and they've watched. There's been an enormous growth in property. It's almost doubled since COVID. But people have been talking about a downturn, a correction, I think is the politically correct term, especially in the condo market. Forbes have even gone to print to say they think there might be a 15% correction, and that will frighten a lot of people. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, real estate is never static. It's always up and down. This is why you need to understand the market and don't panic. Sometimes, let's say, we never envisioned the pandemic. It was something that arrived in all of us, but you need to just understand it's a moment when it was a stock and then it pick up again. So this is why you have a long-term vision of where you are investing. So when things get stuck or for some reason they get down a little bit, you don't panic. You hold because you have a strategy. And part of the strategy is understanding that some things can happen down the road, but you are prepared for it.
So someone once said to me a rather glib statement, which is, it's easy to be successful in business. You just have to predict the future and be right. So tell me, how do I double my money in property then? How do I predict the future and be right? I'm not the only, I may be asking this question, but everyone in the room is asking for the answer.
Well, first thing you need to do is you need to understand where the country is going. You need to understand the vision of the UAE. And and you need to understand as I said, the big players, which is, for example, in this case, again, we go back to Abu Dhabi. I'm a big fan of Abu Dhabi right now. So we can see Disney is going to be something that changed the history of, and a lot of people will go towards Abu Dhabi because of this project. You can see the casino, which is going to also drive people to Ras Al Khaimah. You can see also the line of the train, which is going to connect these three areas, is going to increase in a major way the value of these properties. So you need to understand where the country is going. You need to understand the data. The data never lies to you. So you need to understand the data 10 years ago, follow, and also understand where is this going in the next upcoming 10 years. Of course, there's always going to be some changes up and down. You're never going to get it exactly 100% correct. But you can make, with that strategy, you can make sure that you will not lose money. And investing in the right developers is very important. And also having an understanding what you're investing on. You have to do the homework, and you have to have, as I said, a strategy long term. Real estate is not something that you jump on it, and a lot of people, they want to make money just in 6 months. Oh no, I didn't make money, so that doesn't work. It's always a long term game, and these are the people who make real money. And especially the UAE is growing. The country is doing great, and we are set up to do incredible things. We are probably going to be in the number one country in the world.
Diane Candamil, sponsored by the tourist border.
I am a big fan of the UAE because a lot of countries, they have problems, and I never say the UAE is perfect, but at least we have a vision, and all of us, we have access to the vision of Sheikh Mohammed. It's all public. Everyone can go on the public site and read that vision and understand and be like, huh. And next year we're gonna have flight taxes. Just to have that. That's people would think, oh, it's not real. That is happening, and that we are all part of that vision. It's all about understanding and see it and see the data. And obviously, it has up and downs. It's never perfect.
So
But you play with it.
let me put you on the spot here then. So you talked about Abu Dhabi, you talked about Disney going there. So have we not missed the boat there then? Everybody knows Disney are going there. The prices, I want to put you on the spot. Where are the 2 or 3 places that people should invest at the moment? Where's the
No.
best chance for me to double my money?
It's
Here's my
actually
check.
an
I'm ready.
investment.
Let's go. Where am I going?
It's an investment for everyone. Depends of the level that you can invest, let's say, at the moment that you want to entry. But for example, tomorrow we have a big launch in Jazz Island, which is the same island of Disney, at 1.34 with 62,000 dirhams. You entry, and then you only do one payment a year.
That's the deposit, is it? That's the
deposit. But
that would secure you an apartment.
exactly. But what I'm trying to say is, like, when you get a unit with 5% and 62,000 dirhams next to Disney, there is no brainer. Everyone knows how strong is the brand, and anything that is in an island that is no more space could build at some point, of course, it's going to bring you a return on it. You don't need to be too much into math for it. Then obviously, if you are in a different rank and you can go higher, then you can go for plots, for example, which is, I think, one of the best investments in the UAE right now, because especially when you get the right access to the right plots with the right.
Can you borrow money against plots? We can get leveraged plots.
Yes, obviously,
You don't get any rental income to service the debt, but can you leverage up a
yes, you
plot?
can.
Good. Yeah.
And also there is depends who bring the plot for you, but also the many owners who will give you installments on the plot directly. Everyone wants to do business here, so it's all about the right approach. It's all about who bring you to this seller and organize the sale for you, which is, I think, that's the art of what we do.
Good. I'm impressed. Now, I've heard that there are often distressed assets.
I love-
People that are desperate to sell. How do I get my hands on those?
Well, this is where you need to be with the right in the right crowds in the right
Sorry, I let her into that one, didn't I?
and no, you will not. But a lot of these, I would like to point, a lot of these distress deals are actually very sad because if a lot of people who were very badly advised and they jump on things without really thinking what they're doing. They didn't see also the personal situation, if they're going to be able to carry on with these payments, if they get in debt, if this property is going to increase value. And they end in very sad situations. And sometimes there is a lot of people who's very innocent and they sell to them the UAE dream in a very bad way. And then when they already signed the contract, they're already inside and it's just a really bad decision. So then when you see these um, places that you can even get for 50% down because he's desperate to get out, which is the good moment if you have cash, then sadly you can jump in someone's sadness and do a great deal.
So you don't think the bubble's going to burst? There are still opportunities?
No, this country has proof with data and with example that we all can see that it's growing, it's stable, we are thriving, and I think we will keep thriving for very, very long time. As I say, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect, but we have a vision. We know where we're going, and we all can go with it. So that's great.
So when people are driving home from this afternoon, what would you like them to, what little nugget would you like them to remember or think about in terms of the opportunities here?
There is a lot of opportunities in this country in every corner. You just have basically just to go for it, understand what is your market, understand again where we are all going, grow with it, and use every opportunity that the UAE is giving us. We get a lot open doors everywhere. It's not, for example, like New York when you want to meet with the CEO of a company and try to get an appointment, it will probably never happen. But here, it can happen. You really can meet with the CEO of NOM.
And do you know,
Can manage to get that
do you
appointment.
know most of the developers now?
Sorry?
Do you know most of have you got personal contacts with most of the developers?
Of course, and those contacts are the key when you are investing because, for example, we can get the best of the best for our clients. We can manage to, let's say, if you're not able to do the payment on that time, we can move the payment for 2 weeks later. And, organize certain things that you only get with the right connections. We can also get information that is in certain groups, and that is information that we pass to the clients. This is how they are very happy.
Well, I'm sure that there will be. I think this is a great question and answer section here because if we ask Diane for advice and we make money out of it, we'll all be happy. And if it goes wrong, we can sue her.
You can find me easily.
I know. So I'm sure someone's got some questions. What would people like to ask?
Like, out of all of the names, who are the ones we should be focused on?
Alda. They are the best. They know what they're doing. They're government developer, and I really love their products. And I'm a big fan of Alda. One important thing I would like to say based on this question is when you need to focus, you cannot focus on everything. And this is when a person is creating a strategy for you. It means this person has a line, doesn't mean we cover the whole country in every project or every area. We cover the highest areas where we know our clients are safe, the product is good, where we know the master development that will happen in the area, what will happen there. So, that basically what you said.
There's another question in the front row.
I was going to say, what's your and Master in terms of is that market overheating now? Do you feel?
Casino Land.
Casino is going to be an incredible project and also is going to, I would say, break history of before and after in the UAE because it's the first casino in the country. which is something unheard of. Also, the island is made for entertainment. We will have all the biggest brands around the casino, and it will be the kind of place. It will bring around 5-6 million visitors a year. They will have their own marina, their own airport. So people who likes the casino lifestyle, which in Dubai we have a lot of people who love this lifestyle, and we see it in the DFC, for example. They are thriving, they are busy all the time. These will be the people who love the casino. People will travel from all GCC to this casino. We see a huge demand in Chinese investors for land around the casino, and it's going to be absolutely great. Which is opposite, for example, for Disney, which Disney is going to be again great, but it's more for families who want to enjoy the museums, who want to enjoy the beach, who want to have be with their kids, and they don't want you will never see Florida in the casino. But the UAE is so smart that they find a way to have everything for everyone. And also, this is important when you invest. You need to see what you feel proud. For example, if you are not a casino person and this is completely not your lifestyle, then you probably will not feel happy there, even if it's a good
I
investment.
guess there's a big difference too, whether you're investing as an owner occupier, somewhere you want to live that will increase in value, or you're just an investor where you'll just go where the maximum upside is.
True, but even if as an investor, you need to invest in something you believe on deeply. So as I say, if you hate the casino thing, then you probably will not be like, don't even want to have apartments there. But if you are more into family beach style and all the stuff, you will be so proud to have 10 units next to Disney. So it depends. So if you are other kind of investor and you want offices or you want to be a little bit at sea, but you need to feel proud of your investment. I think that will make it even better.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we should move on. We're all a bit hungry. So let's say thank you very much. Yes, Diane Candamil.
The bank is really a part-time job on the side. I do a little bit of work in AI, so about a couple boards, and I advise a couple of governments. I'm in Central Asia, actually the one who draws the favor on AI. And then so I travel a lot, and sometimes people started thinking that my day job is just actually a CIA cover. I don't think finance is a secret service. I think it's a secret art of people using a lot of complicated words and terminology to
Right.
make it difficult for average people to
So
kind of get in.
my first real question, I've written it down, is if you had to explain DeFi, decentralized finance, to your grandmother while she was making a cup of tea, what would you tell her?
Stay the hell away from it.
What is it?
Okay, so everyone knows what traditional finance is, right? All of you have bank accounts. And so traditional finance, effectively a bank or financial institutions holds your money, right? We basically, as a bank, we charge you to hold your funds, then we charge you for you to use your funds. And then sometimes we tell you how you can use it and where you can use it. And if we don't like, or if the US government doesn't like how you use it, we might either freeze it or seize it, right? That's traditional finance. And then there's a bunch of people in the middle somewhere who make money off you. MasterCard, Visa, everyone charges you a little bit to basically spend your money. DeFi, decentralized finance, is similar on blockchain, but the difference is this: it's decentralized. For what it means is there is no bank or like centralized institution that holds your funds. You hold your own funds, which comes with a risk, right? On top of that, there is no centralized institution or government that can seize your funds or freeze your funds. There is no bank to charge you for transactions. Everything is run through smart contracts, which effectively, in theory, creates a far more efficient market, and everything is instant. So it's cheaper because there's no middleman. It's faster because there's no middleman. And it's instant settlement, right? So you don't have to wait for a transfer to clear in like 3 days or whatever, because it's 24/7 liquidity. That's really what DeFi is. I feel it's very similar to California in the 1800s. You can still find gold, but most of it has already been, most people have already claimed it. But I think what it will do is it will create California as an economy. All right. So if you go looking for gold, I think you're probably a little bit late. But if you're looking to build the infrastructure for one of the biggest economies in the world, I think you're still a little bit early.
So the people that made their money in the Wild West weren't the people that found the gold. They were the people apparently that sold the picks and shovels. Who are the picks and shovel makers of the DeFi industry?
Well, here's the interesting thing. It hasn't really been determined yet. I think banks and traditional financial institutions are getting into this space now because they realize you need picks and shovels, you need drills, and that's very expensive and not very easy. And on top of that, for all of you in the room here, right? So you could probably have a lot of money on DeFi, but I think most people don't feel very comfortable to have their money on chain because you don't understand the risk. You don't understand the counterparty risk. Well, technically there is no counterparty risk, but there is a counterparty risk, right? You lose the keys to your wallet, you lose your funds. This happens to quite a few people. You don't know what you're doing. I usually make this joke. It's like, if I told you that your ATM card, every time you use your debit card in an ATM, there's a 50-50 chance that you lose all of your finances, right? You probably wouldn't use that. And that's kind of what DeFi is. A lot of scammers, highly complicated user interface. You really need to know what you're doing. And so as an example, I'm fairly deep into the DeFi world. I'm fairly degenerate, even though I'm a banker. And so there's ways where you can park your money. Let's say you have $100. You can park it as liquidity because there's a lack of liquidity in the DeFi markets. You can park it as liquidity, and I can probably make for a new protocol 25% on that every month, which is insane, right? And all of you will be like, sign me up. But here's the risk. You can also lose everything in one go. It's like playing with 10x leverage without the actual leverage. And so it's very, very, very risky. There's always a reason, and I tell people that when you can make a lot of money, right, when something feels too good to be true, it often is, or there's a significant risk that you probably just don't understand well enough. Now, when you understand the risk, that's okay. You can go in and you can make a lot of money. I know people who made tons and tons of money. I had to explain DeFi one day to my CEO in the bank. And we were in Amsterdam at the time. And so I don't know how many of you remember Trump got elected and he launched his coin, right? The Trump coin. Right. I knew that we were in trouble when the CEO of a bank texted me over. So we were going to go for breakfast and we were up early and we were going to go for breakfast at 6. He texted me at 5. He's like, Trump launched a coin. I can buy with a credit card. I'm going to buy, right? Never buy anything with a credit card with leverage, first and foremost. And so I'm like, look, don't buy now, because at the time it already had hit a certain value and I didn't think it was going to go much higher. I turned out to be spectacularly wrong and I cost him a lot of money. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I'm like, let me show you how you can make money in a little bit more of a risk-free way. People want to buy this coin, people want to sell this coin. In order to do that instantly, you need liquidity, right? In order to get liquidity, you need to give people incentives to give their money for that to kind of serve as liquidity. So I put a $10,000 in front of him. And I'm like, I'm going to put this $10,000 at liquidity. I'm not buying the coin. I'm not selling the coin. I'm just providing the capital for people who want to buy in and out. But it means is I start with $10,000. Over time, that becomes whatever, $10,000 worth of Trump coin. And then it scales up and down as people buy and sell, buy and sell. So if the coin goes up, I pocket the upside, but more importantly, I take fees. And those fees were filthy, right? Those fees were such that after 4 hours, $10,000 was worth $150. Now, before you think anything else, I then round tripped it. Round tripping is a very important thing that you go through in crypto. It's when you go from 0 to 100 and then all the way back to 0. And that happened. Why did it happen? Well, we talked about it, right? You get greedy. You think the price will keep going up, right? You see everyone else making tons of money. Initially, you were like, if I make 100,000, I'll stop. That's exactly what I need. But then you make 100,000 much faster than you think you would. And you're like, whoa, I can make 200. I can make 300. If you don't have a stop loss, a clear target of where you want to get out, you end up like Gary did, right? You end up holding the asset too long because you become too greedy and it becomes an emotional decision, not a rational decision.
So I talked about the boring sweet spot of 66%. How much can you leverage up any DeFi products?
To be honest, there's DeFi protocols where you can leverage as much as you want, pretty much, all the way up to 100x, which is utterly insane. And that's how some people have made a ton of money. It's also how a lot of people have lost a lot of money, right? I don't know how many of you follow the DeFi markets. If you look at what happened with Binance a couple months ago, many of these big centralized exchanges bet against their client. This is actually important for any of you who want to go down this path. And it's not against Binance, but you got to understand the platform that holds your fund. Imagine if the bank is shorting you. That's what happens, right? So let's say you're betting that the price of Bitcoin or Solana or Ethereum is going to go down, and you take a position and you leverage because they'll give you 10x easily, right? How can I market manipulate? Well, there's not a lot of liquidity. So if I now start actively dumping that same token or buying that token, I can influence the price with 10, 15%, immediately forcing you into a margin call. You lose everything. I pocket all the fees, right? And then I do that stuff all over again. Now, what's the problem in crypto? It's unregulated. So people can do it. As a bank, I can't do that. I'm capped. I can't charge you certain interest, right? I have a lot of governmental oversight. So as much as I fundamentally hate banks, is this recorded?
Of course.
As much as I fundamentally hate banks, I've been trying to get out of banks forever. It's actually really good because, central banks and governance, it ensures that customers are protected. Average customers are protected. And so that's what you can do. You can do 10x, 5x, 10x, 15x is pretty common.
So the price could go up while you're sleeping, but you've been shorted out and you've lost all your money.
Here's the thing. If you want to be a crypto trader, all jokes aside, you can't sleep ever. Ever. It's a 24/7
Unless you have a
monitor.
stop loss.
Unless you put a stop loss. But the problem with stop losses is also there's high fluctuation, right? I got wiped out many times with stop losses because it dipped and then it kind of sparked back up again, right? And so even knowing what the stop loss should be, unless you are a market market maker, which is effectively the same thing, it's very, very difficult to kind of time it right.
So you're working in traditional finance. You're working for a mid-sized bank here, yet your heart is really in DeFi. And you're the chief strategy and innovation officer. So clearly there are some things that traditional banks do better than DeFi that maybe no one admits to. But how are you advising for those two technologies to merge? Where's the future going to end up? The people in this room are running businesses. They're thinking, they understand a bit about blockchain. How is that going to affect them in the future? Not in 5 years' time, in 2 or 3 years' time. How's it going to affect loans, interest rates, borrowing, leverage? How will the two technologies work together, traditional and DeFi?
It'll be a hybrid model. There's not going to be such a thing as DeFi is going to take over TradFi or the other way around for that matter. It's going to be like everything is going to be.
How can these people benefit from that, Gio?
Look, I'll tell you first how most people will benefit from these technologies, which is the same as any technology, which includes fintech, which includes the internet, which includes AI right now, is when we no longer have to talk about the technology, it just becomes a means to an end. What I call under the hood technology, right? All of you have cars. Most of you, I think, wouldn't necessarily know how the suspension system works, but you know what it does, right? And you when you buy a car, you're not necessarily, I don't think, I'm going to go like, what suspension system do you have, right? As a key decision maker. And so it's one of those things, but DeFi is really that. It's just doing traditional banking smarter, more efficient than everything else. So as long as we have to talk about what it is, I think you're not going to get mass adoption. Now, how can you leverage it? I think if you're early and if you understand the technology well enough, when it comes down to moving funds around globally, in particular, cross-border payments can be done much cheaper, much faster, much more efficient. Dealing, again, depending on your type of business, dealing with certain countries in Africa, South America can be significantly easier. You can tap into markets significantly easier. And then the last thing is, I don't know what kind of business you're in, right? But I am a bank. It is really hard opening a bank account for a small business. And once you open a bank account, it's really hard to keep that bank account. And you know why that is? Because we don't care about small businesses. That doesn't generate any income for us. Quite the opposite. Because of all the compliance stuff, right? The US government put a lot of pressure on KYC, know your customer, avoidance of terrorist financing, and all these sort of things. The cost we have for an account is such that unless you make a certain amount of income, we can't charge you the fees to break even. And that's why it doesn't make sense for us unless you take like our bank, we're a little bit small, but you can take a long-term view and say, well, we invest in companies when they're small because they grow with us and over time they become a 20, 30, whatever million of a company does. I have a lot of founder friends, and I'm sure there's some of them here, who make $15, $20 million a year turnover in the company, can't get a mortgage, right? And so there's products like in more mature startup markets like the US, you can say loans leverage your shares, right? Or the stock that you have in the company. But it's very difficult here. For most banks, if I talk to my head of corporate banking, he will tell me, Law, I can either do 1,000 small companies or one big, we work a lot with big developers, one big company, right? I can make the same fees at a fraction of the risk. Why would I bother? So it's very difficult.
It is.
It is.
which is a little ironic given that we are supposed to be, an SME friendly market and we are asking all these innovation companies to come in. This is if you have a traditional business. If you run a crypto business, God help you, right? Opening a bank account will be, I opened a bank account for Binance. We were the first ones to do it. It took me 8.5 months. Have you seen John Wick? John Wick, the Ford movie? When he goes up to the stairs to the sucker curve? That's how that felt, opening that account, right? You just get shot at all the time. And by the time you're almost at the top, someone kicks you all the way down. And that was just an operating account, right? You got to understand, it's just an account where they park money and pay their employees and pay their leases. No crypto going in, no crypto going out. But it's this notion of, oh, it's Binance, it's a crypto company, risk, risk, risk. People fear what they don't understand.
So where is this kind of blockchain innovation money going? And how much of it is kind of just expensive theatre?
A lot of it is expensive theater, but that's whenever there's a lot of capital waiting to be deployed, you get the theater, right? And so right now, blockchain and AI are the hottest things to invest in for VCs. Why is blockchain interesting? Not so much because of the tech. It's interesting because when you have a blockchain protocol, you can do a token issuance. What that really means is you issue a utility token as part of your company, and there's no vesting. So when you're a VC, I can invest, then the company issues a token. Now, here's the thing, it's unregulated. It's like an IPO, but you set your own price, unregulated, and there's no vesting, right? So I can invest, $1 million at a valuation of 10 million. And the company says, well, tomorrow we're worth $1 billion. So my 1 million is now worth, 100 million. And I can immediately dump it on the secondary market. That's why investors want to invest in blockchain technologies. AI is slightly different. If I have to say, I think investing in AI makes a lot of sense. There's this clip from Elon Musk with the Saudi foreign minister and Jensen from NVIDIA. I don't know if you've seen it. They're investing big in data centers. By the way, non-financial advice. I put a lot of my efforts now in AI compute. I think AI compute data centers will be the new gold. It will be the new electricity. It will be the new railroads because everything is running on AI. And what people don't understand is the amount of compute that you need to operate all of these new systems is insane. And we're running out of that. And there's not many places in the world that can offer affordable electricity and consistent to then also build the compute powers. But Elon made this joke. Well, he didn't make a joke. He was asked, how much is he investing? And he kind of said, it's $1 bazillion trillion, $8 bazillion trillion. And that was a little bit of a joke, but it's also a little bit of a meta reflection of this world. OpenAI, right? ChatGPT. The co-founder and CTO is a lady called Mira Murati. So she left OpenAI after they had this whole CEO debacle with Sam and everything else. She founded her own company called Thinking Machines. All right. 2 weeks in, no product, no idea of a product. She built what we call a frontier AI lab. Frontier AI labs are really, really hot. What it means is you're doing research to figure out stuff that you're going to do that's going to be really important, but you don't really know what. You know how much she raised? She raised $2 billion at a $12 billion valuation. She now made an initial prototype, which is to fine-tune AI models, and she's going to raise another $10 billion at a $60 billion valuation. This is the AI space right now. Is it a bubble? Part of it probably not.
I've got to stop and open that up for questions. I mean, it's such a fascinating area, and fortunes will be lost and found. I've always said, don't invest in what you don't understand. But even when you do understand it, it's difficult to get it right.
I mean, so we launched a corporate venture fund for the bank, and I sit on the board of, I work a lot with governments in Central Asia. So I sit on the board of the Azerbaijan's government innovation fund and the same for Kazakhstan. I have a lot of access. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley and Singapore and all over. I have a lot of access to great founders and great ideas, right? I get it wrong all the time. Companies that I think should do really well don't. Companies that should really not do well end up doing amazing. And it's really, really hard. But what I've learned is that it's driven primarily with monkey see, monkey do. So in the VC world, there's a couple of big ones, Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia, A16Z, right? Andreessen Horowitz. I have seen partners of reputable VC firms pass on a company saying, absolute terrible. A16Z leads the next round, they all want to get in, right? Why? If you look at it, 80% of all the returns in VC come from 3 or 4 companies. So people just follow the leader. It's a herd instinct because it's really, 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 really difficult Like you can talk to founders. Some founders are amazing at building a narrative. Are they amazing at building a company? Like Tar, can they scale a company, right? That's the biggest thing I find. A lot of founders know how to build something, build a great prototype. And then the question is, can you scale this? Not necessarily is there a market to scale. Can you? Do you know how to build a team to scale it? Can you deal with the resilience that you need? Because it's a really, really rough ride. And I think, you guys probably know that it's not fun. People romanticize what it means to be a founder. And it can be amazing once you're successful, but it's a very, very rough ride.
And Lord, don't make it. Let's open to questions. I'm keen to break for lunch. You already had one. No, you can't have another one.
I'd be interested in your thoughts on the cycles, about cycles, depending on who you speak to these days. The 4-year, the bull market, the bear market. Some are saying it's all over.
Of crypto specifically.
So there's this conspiracy. I'm a pretty much of a Bitcoin OG. And so there's a conspiracy in some of our groups, which is why a lot of people have been dumping Bitcoins. If you watch Bitcoin, there's a lot of whales have been dumping Bitcoin. And it comes from this notion that some people believe that Bitcoin has been infiltrated by governments, which is, by the way, true, right? Because while Bitcoin is completely permissionless and decentralized, there's a finite supply. So you can buy up the supply. And on top of that, it still runs on computers that run on data centers. So you can still control things. People believe that the governments, US government, Chinese government, this government here, right? Everyone, I don't know if you saw that DU announced a Bitcoin mining as a service capability. To me, that tells me we hit peak interest. Look, yes, the US is looking to play around with their treasury by making people more dependent on a digital version of the dollar through all these stablecoins. Yes. Where the cycle is going to go, I don't know. Are we done? Absolutely not. This is teething pains for any new type of technology. It will go up again at some point, but then it also will go down again at some point. What I do see is what's interesting, I think, as a proxy, as the only thing I'll leave you with. It used to be that people looked at crypto and then they looked at the market to explain crypto. Right now, when even big media outlets, they use crypto as a proxy to explain the markets, right? Particularly Bitcoin and gold. Bitcoin has become a bit of a global hedge. And so I think that's probably the best opinion I can give you on that.
Good. Well, let me say thank you very much. I'm completely fascinated, Gio, and that's marvelous. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for humoring me. But with the workbooks, I was really just trying to tease you into thinking about how you were going to look at wealth generation differently and making a commitment to doing something. While I'm here, a few people had asked, for the business people here, could I share some of the tricks and tips that are not in the book about what I've learned in business. And so I said for the rest of the afternoon, it'll only take 15 or 20 minutes and then we'll be done. So I thought, I'll talk about these 5 or 6 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've done some research into what makes companies successful. I was really fascinated. I spent some time in the States looking at successful businesses there, and I spent some time working with Ashridge Management College in Berkhamsted, really looking in granular detail about what makes businesses successful. And this research taught me, I think, how to be successful. So there are 3 successful businesses tend to fall into 3 categories. And I'll cover the first 2 very quickly. The first type of successful business had a monopoly on the market. British Telecom, electricity companies over here, car parking companies. If you have a monopoly on the market, if you're the only game in town, you can charge whatever you like and people have to buy it. Companies that are successful were monopolies. I was running an accountancy recruitment business at the time. There was no way I was ever going to have a monopoly on any market. So that one was a write-off for me. God bless the people who've got the monopolies, but that wasn't anything that I could emulate. The second type of company that was successful was one that invented some technology that was wonderful, that people didn't have. And again, we're seeing massive valuations for tech companies that are growing quickly. But you could take that back a generation, if you like. I remember studying the product of super glue. When it first came out, it was revolutionary. You know, before that, you know, your teapot handle would be have to stuck together with something or other. If you can come up with something that is technologically advanced, you'll be successful. That filled me with gloom as well, because the company I was running couldn't really invent anything. I'm not going to invent the next iPhone, the next Samsung, so that was dull. So it was this third group of companies that I studied that really gave me insight and excitement, and I think that you should take note of this. This is not me, this is my research. The third group of companies, and it didn't seem to matter whether they were manufacturing companies, service businesses, online businesses, people working from home. Can anyone tell me what those companies had in common? Anyone got any ideas? Leadership, good answer. Staff, good answer. But it was more simple than that, and it spooked me, and I loved this answer. The one thing they had in common was that they aimed high. They aimed really high. They set, I think Stephen Covey talks about big, hairy, audacious goals. The Americans talk about goals that make you suck air. You know, wow, could we really do that? That's extraordinary. We could never do that. And so I started aiming high. And it works. But it's not that easy. You can't just aim high and hope it happens. So setting big, hairy, audacious goals. Whatever the goal that you wrote in the workbook, rip it up, throw it away. What's a goal that could be bigger, louder, brighter? Why can't you aim higher? I was just talking to somebody on the table and he was talking about Elon Musk. I thought, well, Elon Musk doesn't even think we live on the planet. He thinks we all live in a simulation. He said there's a 1 billion to 1 chance that we're not in a simulation. Look, if that's the case, I was going to say you're on this planet once, you might as well go for it. If you're in a simulation, there's nothing to lose at all. So I would urge you all to aim high, set really high goals, then chunk them down. You know that expression, life by the yard is hard, but by the inch it's a cinch. So start with the goal, aim high, bless you, and then chunk them down and then measure them. So I still hold that true. Setting up any business is quite simple. I think there are just 3 questions we have to ask. It's how much will it cost? How much will it make? And how long will it take? That's all there is. They're the only 3 questions you need to ask. And if you can answer them properly and honestly, that can form the basis of your business plan. It's pretty straightforward, really, and it's something that everybody and anybody can do. I don't think any Olympic athlete, got out of bed and just thought, oh, I'll see how I go. I remember I used to follow tennis. There was this, I don't know, where was Goran Ivanisevic from? Was he Czechoslovakian? Tennis player. But it was when Tim Hemman was playing in Wimbledon, and they said, Tim, do you think you can win Wimbledon? And he said, well, I'm playing quite well, and I might be able to, and I think if I get to the final, I might be all right. And then they got Goran Ivanisevic was a ranked outside. He wasn't even seeded. And they said, Goran, do you think you can win Wimbledon? He said, it's my destiny. And he won Wimbledon, unseeded player, because he aimed high. I'm sure he had a great team around him, but he had that belief. So I would urge you, one of the snippets to take away from today is please aim high. We're only on this planet once. The next point that I just wanted to toss at you really was our thoughts about failure. Because when we're at school, I think we've perhaps all tried a musical instrument or tried a sport that we then decided we don't want to learn to play the violin. That Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star was so awful that we're going to try the saxophone next week, or the piano, or a guitar. But it wasn't seen as failure. It was just seen as trying something else. I tried the long jump, wasn't very good at that, tried running, and then I found that, I was quite a good discus thrower, or whatever it is. So I think we need to think about failure. This try lots of stuff and keep what works phrase is a Jim Collins phrase from his Built to Last book. But I think it's a good mantra to have in business, because what it's really saying is try lots of stuff that doesn't cost you a fortune. It could be a business breakfast. It could be, let's try and open in Singapore, although that might cost you a bit more of a fortune. Because when you're trying lots of stuff, you don't have to spend lots of money trying things. But when you find something that works, then that's the time to go all in, because the odds are in your favor. You're not gambling then at all. You've tried it on a smaller scale. It works. So McDonald's didn't suddenly decide they were going to have drive-through McDonald's. They tried one or two to see if it worked. It worked. Then they went all in, and all in quite quickly. So that's another business lesson, nothing to do with doubling up, that I think that we should all... I even studied the Heinz organization in Pittsburgh, where the CEO went on some trip and came back with a gun that he'd bought. And his wife said, "That's nice, darling, but it's not staying here." So he took it to work, and they fired the gun anytime somebody made a huge error, because he was trying to put into a culture that it was okay to make mistakes. And if you're frightened to make mistakes, we won't do anything. You've got to have some confidence in what you do. If you've got no confidence, when you're going to a nightclub, you're always going to end up with the ugly girl in the room. So try lots of stuff and keep what works. I would urge you to reframe failure. Failure is just another way that something didn't work. Most people who've given up smoking failed many times, 5 or 6 times, before they found the right way to give up smoking. So try lots of stuff and keep what works. The third thing that I've learnt by getting things wrong is this whole concept of people value what they own. And a lot of us who run small businesses like to keep all of the equity to ourselves. But I've found, if you can, and private equity know this better than any of us in this room, if you can share your equity between 1 or 2 or 3 really key people, you'll often get their buy-in, and they're aligned with you. They'll start to worry at 3 o'clock in the morning about what's going to happen the next day, and you're not just going to be there by yourself. The problem I had was that I spread the marmalade too thin. I gave lots of people share options. I think there was a point when I thought that the receptionist would eat less pencils if she had 500 quid worth of share options. That was wrong. It was equity that I was giving away that she didn't see any value in. So I would say give big chunks of equity, 3, 4, 5%, to your key people, your CEO, your chief operating officer, your key salesperson. But only give it to them if they are going to stay with you. So everybody has to lose their equity if they leave the company for whatever reason at all, whether they're sacked, whether they resign, whether they die. They have to lose their equity. They have to be aligned with you on the journey until you sell. And if you don't plan on selling, then, and it's a lifestyle business, then it's difficult to motivate people, People value things they own. That's why they don't put their feet on their chairs at home, but on the train you might find them, resting their feet. So that's my third little snippet. Think carefully about equity, but for me, it's worked, and people have worked as hard as I've worked to try and get to a bigger goal. And 3/4 of a much bigger apple is better than trying to go it alone. Sometimes. The next point really, I think, is about people measuring how well they're doing. And I'm often curious to see these business surveys about how our companies are doing. Because what they're really asking, I think it's good to ask your customers, how are we doing and what could we do better? But in business, it's not about being good. That sounds like a terrible statement to make. It's not about being good. It's about outpacing your competitors. And if you want to outpace your competitors, you better know a lot about them. Not just their financials. You need to understand their product offerings, their culture, their comp packages. When they win, why do they win? When they lose, why do they lose? It's about outpacing the competition. I was talking to somebody earlier, I said, what kind of business are you in? They said, I'm in medical recruitment. I'd love to spend a bit more time with that person. Are they still here? Who said that? Okay. What are your competitors like? What are they doing? What are their offerings like? What could you do better? What could you do better to leap ahead of them in terms of quality and speed and all sorts of other things? Because it's not about being good. I've learned that. It's just about outpacing the competition. What kind of share of wallet are you able to take from them? How will you measure it? And it's great taking business from a competitor too. So it doesn't have to be a growing market. That old expression, all boats rise on a rising tide. When markets get tough, the only way you can grow is to grow your share of wallet. There aren't many business books written about cunning. I don't mean cunning in a way of ripping people off or scamming them, but in terms of finding a better way, finding a quicker way. It's good to be cunning. So again, that's another little snippet, and we'll talk about a lot of this stuff in the DUMM Club community. And then the last point really, which sounds pretty obvious, is really about grooming your business for sale and actually having a plan to sell it. It's very nice sometimes when somebody approaches us and we get a tap on the shoulder and we sell the business as a reluctant bride. Oh, I don't really want to sell it. Oh, well, okay, if there's enough money. My business partner, Luke Johnson, owned the Ivy, the Caprice, J. Sheiky's, Bamboo, The Collection and Daphne's. It's a great business, lovely restaurants. What a great lifestyle to have, the man that owns those restaurants. Yet someone tapped him on the shoulder and said, can I buy you lunch, Luke? I'd like to give you a good offer for the business. He said, it's Richard Caring actually, who owns Annabelle's. He said, I'm not selling the business, Richard. It's not for sale. So they had lunch and Richard said, I'm going to make you an offer. Luke said, the business isn't for sale. He said, hear me out. This is the offer. And Luke said, that's a very good offer, Richard, thank you. But I told you the business isn't for sale. Richard said, but Luke, if the offer was twice that much, you'd sell it, wouldn't you? And Luke said, yes, I would. He said, well, that's the offer then. And he sold the business. And I think he probably regrets it too. But that doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen to the likes of me, sadly. So I think you do need to groom your business for sale. And that means you need to spend time doing that. That might take you 18 months to 2 years. A lot of people here, a lot of businesses I've run or worked with are owner-manager businesses. So if you take the owner out, if the owner gets run over by a bus, what's left, what's worth buying? So what depth of management, and also private equity, by the way, are massively data-driven now. Even trade buyers are enormously data-driven. If it moves, they'll measure it, and rightly so, and compare it. So, and also, when you're grooming your business, it generally will come down to a multiple of your profits. So then is the time to stop buying paper clips. Because every 100,000 that you, a 10 times multiple, every 100,000 that you save in costs is another million on the price. So you might think about not paying bonuses that year. You might think about not buying paper clips that year. But you can't just do that at the last minute. That time needs to come earlier. And then you need to think about what's compelling, what's unique about the business, what are the growth plans. Can I demonstrate that I'm leaving something else on the table for the people that are buying it? Nobody wants to buy a business at the top of the market. No one wants to buy Blockbuster Video just as Netflix are taking over. And I'm saying that because my tech business that I left 18 million quid on the table was a lowering margin business, and I should have sold a lot earlier. So groom your business for sale, do it properly, and also think about the advisors that you're choosing. How well they know the market, how know the customers. Are you selling to trade buyers? Are you selling to private equity? Do they know the buyers? Do they know the multiples? There's a big change in the way that data is prepared now for business sales of most sizes. Have you come across the expression vendor due diligence? So instead of somebody giving you an offer and then getting you to go exclusive with them, where they'll now clamber all over your books, you do the vendor due diligence first. You get a third party. We got PricewaterhouseCoopers to do the vendor due diligence. So they did all the due diligence that a buyer might want to have. We made it available to all of the people that might be interested in buying the business, so that when we got an offer, it was an offer that was a proper offer and the due diligence had been done. Because as I'm sure you're all aware, once you try and do a deal with somebody, it's like buying a house. They'll try and chip the price on the back of the survey. The due diligence is the survey that they do. But if your vendor due diligence is done up front, which means you've got to pay for it, but that also shows prospective buyers that you're serious about selling and not just kicking the tires. So I would urge people to spend the money on doing vendor due diligence so that when the offers come in, they're only subject to the contract. So that's just a few little snippets that are not in the book. We've got 5 minutes left, and if you wouldn't mind indulging me, the DUMM club that I'm setting up is really a club for entrepreneurs who want access to me. It's a sort of fractionalized NED role in some ways, but for a tenth of the cost that you might pay for a NED. I'm trying to set up a community of very serious people, vetted, we won't let anybody in, who are trying to double their money and then trying to double it again. Sharing mistakes, sharing successes. There are some exercises in there. I'll show you a few slides really. There are lessons, there are modules. We're doing weekly calls. We're doing a weekly interview in different sectors against different business people that have done well. There's a really dumb area of the biggest mistakes that people have made called really dumb. Here's an example of how the community looks. There's an events calendar, weekly Q&A, tools and resources. If anybody's interested at all, talk to me. At the moment, we've made it focus just on the UAE and the UK, but there's an enormous amount of resource in there in terms of templates, loan templates, funding sources, tax rates. You know, there's a lot of stuff in there. I'm not going to push this too much. Join some community, get some help. I actually wrote an article about a month ago about how you should put your boards together, and it was called Hire an Arsehole. But not any arsehole, the right arsehole. Because you don't want to surround yourself with board members that are yes men and women. You don't want to surround yourself with sycophants. Well, that's a great idea, Tom. That's a great idea, Danny. Yeah, that'll be wonderful. You want people who will question you. You want people who will challenge you. You want me to say, hang on, I said, I thought you said if it wasn't profitable by Christmas, we were going to close it down. Oh, people will hold you to account. So whether you choose the DUMM club or whether you choose a different method, find somebody who doesn't give a shit. Actually, who does care about you, but isn't dependent on you for their salary, to help challenge you and fight with you and argue with you to help your business be the best that it can be. Look, I'll send you an email afterwards. There's a 25% off for anybody that wants to join. But the point I'm making is wealth creation, and I'll finish with this really. I hope that we're all dreamers ready to become doers. Peter Drucker said the best way to predict the future is to create it. Thank you for coming this afternoon. I really hope that you start to create a different future for you, for your families, because it's fun and it's worth it. That's it. Thank you.